So let's talk about Wu Zetian, the one and only woman to ever rule China as emperor. But here's the thing, we're not going to start with her. We're going to start with a really weird historical puzzle that had people online scratching their heads not too long ago.
Okay, so there's this story, right? That when Empress Wu moved her entire court from one capital city to another, the procession itself was so huge, so all-consuming, that it literally destroyed the countryside as it went. I mean, does that actually add up?
And hey, it's not just us wondering about this. Someone on Ask Historians pointed out the exact same thing. Logically, a bunch of rich people traveling through your town should be a good thing, right? A huge boost for the local economy. Not total destruction. It just screams that something got seriously lost in translation.
So what really happened? Well, the truth? It completely flips the script. The court wasn't the cause of the devastation. They were trying to escape it.
This is the core of the whole mix-up. The myth paints this picture of a careless tyrant on the move, while the reality is actually a story of a calculated response to a massive life-or-death crisis. The devastation wasn't caused by the court was moving because of the devastation.
The reality on the ground was just horrific. Historical records from that time describe an absolute catastrophe. We're talking about a perfect storm of disaster. Drought, floods, and plagues all hitting at once. Things got so bad that people were, and this is grim, reportedly resorting to cannibalism to survive.
And for the capital city, Chang'an, this was a logistical nightmare. It was a massive city that depended entirely on grain being shipped in through the Grand Canal. But when floods cut off that vital supply line, the city was facing mass starvation. So moving the whole court to Luoyang, which was easier to supply, that wasn't an act of cruelty. It was triage. It was a survival strategy, plain and simple.
And that whole crisis, it gives us a perfect window into the world of the woman at the very center of it all. A figure so powerful, so controversial, that these kinds of myths could just stick to her for centuries.
So meet Wu Zetian, and let this sink in. In the thousands of years of Chinese dynastic history, she is the only woman to ever break that ultimate glass ceiling and rule not just as a power behind the throne, but as emperor, capital E. She took the title for herself.
If you want to get a sense of her personality, you just have to hear this one story she told about herself. The emperor had this wild horse that nobody could tame, and a young Wu Zetian, who was just a junior consort at the time, steps forward with this chillingly practical plan. She says, if the whip doesn't work, I'll use the mace, and if the mace doesn't work, I'll use the dagger to cut its throat. Yeah, this was not a woman who messed around.
And believe me, her climb to the top was a total roller coaster. She gets into the palace as a teenager, then gets booted out to a Buddhist convent when the emperor dies, which was pretty standard for consorts who hadn't had kids. But somehow she maneuvers her way back into the palace, and within just a few years, bam, she's the new empress.
But you know, getting the title of empress, that was just one battle. Holding on to that power and actually ruling in a deeply patriarchal system that was designed by and for men, well, that was a whole other war.
When her husband, the emperor, got so sick he couldn't really rule anymore, Wu Zetian just stepped up. And she was so good at it, so effective, that they became this incredible power couple. They were literally known as the two sages, ruling as equals. For decades, she was basically running China.
But all that success came with a huge backlash. The official histories were all written by male Confucian scholars who, let's just say, were not fans. To them, a woman in charge was an offense against the natural order of the universe, so they just tore her apart in the history books. They painted her as this ruthless, power-hungry monster, accusing her of everything you can imagine. The record is so full of venom that historians today agree it's incredibly biased and, honestly, full of holes.
And the smear campaign didn't stop with biased history books. It got weirder. In one famous novel, they literally rewrote her origin story. She wasn't even human. She was a malevolent fox spirit sent down to Earth specifically to destroy the dynasty. That's how much her power freaked them out.
Which brings us to her final move. After a lifetime of rewriting all the rules and fighting a system that was trying to erase her, she made sure she got the last word by saying absolutely nothing at all.
As she was planning for her own death, she gave one last command about her legacy, an order that has basically baffled people for over 1,000 years.
That's right. Her husband's massive tombstone, standing right next to hers, is covered in inscriptions praising all his great deeds. Hers is just a massive, silent,
Empty slab of rock. No name, no titles, no accomplishments. Nothing.
And that is the ultimate puzzle Wu Zetian leaves us with, isn't it? After a whole life of having her story twisted by men who wanted her gone, was this her final defiant act? A refusal to let her enemies write her epitaph, instead just leaving this blank slate that invites every single one of us and every generation after to look at the facts and judge her for ourselves? What do you think?